Every year around the world, we produce 1.5 billion used tires. If we break down this number, every passing minute sees the tires of 3,000 vehicles become unusable. Kuwait is home to the world's largest tire dumping graveyard. Over the past 20 years, used tires from all over the world have been accumulating here. If viewed in aerial footage, the scene appears like this. This graveyard, spread across thousands of acres, is so large that it can be surprisingly seen from space. But having this graveyard in a country like Kuwait, one of the richest in the world, is perplexing. Why has Kuwait been continuously collecting these for the past 20 years? And what are used tires eventually used for? An average car tire lasts for 30 to 40,000 kilometers, and after that, they are of no use. They are thrown away, or often seen discarded by the roadside. Other recycled materials can simply be melted and reused, but tires, because they are made by combining rubber and sulfur, cannot be reversed in this process. Moreover, recycling used tires produces dangerous gases, and this process is illegal in many countries. Even in Europe, keeping used tires as waste is illegal. So, most Western countries, to get rid of millions of tires annually, send them to Kuwait. In the middle of the Arabian desert, spanning 1,000 square meters, is the Sulaibiya tire graveyard. Here, mountains of tires are not in a single layer but are in pits 50 feet deep, where they are continuously dumped. Kuwait purchases these used tires at the rate of 1 dinar per ton and stores them here. As Kuwait kept doing this over the years, it gradually took the shape of a graveyard, now visible even from space. According to Kuwait government officials, there are about 70 million tires in this entire tire graveyard. Kuwait is a very rich country, so rich that 1 unit of its currency, 1 Kuwaiti dinar, equals $3.3. Seeing this, the world is very concerned about why Kuwait is collecting this scrap, especially since until now, Kuwait has only been accumulating them without recycling a single one. Kuwait didn't lack money, so it was buying them at any rate, even though the Kuwaiti government didn't have any plan for them either. Finally, an incident occurred that led Kuwaiti officials to decide to properly dispose of these tires. From 2012 to 2020, several times the tires caught fire on their own. Since there were hundreds of tires, the fire spread quickly and became difficult to control. This was the reason they first divided the tires into separate squares so that in case of a fire, it could be controlled. However, the series of fires didn't stop. The black smoke clouds not only produced lethal gases, but also caused significant distress to the people in the nearby city of Al Jarrah. To understand the scale of the devastation, look at this satellite photo. The massive fire actually started in a small square of the graveyard. Imagine the damage if the fire spread throughout the entire graveyard. These incidents put a lot of international pressure on Kuwait because these harmful gases remained unfiltered in the atmosphere. Finally, in 2021, Kuwait began to dispose of these tires. Truckloads of tires were sent around the world for recycling. But what are these used tires used for? A normal tire contains 3 things: rubber, carbon, and steel wires. With the help of a pyrolysis plant, these tires are first melted. The rubber turns into gas, which, when cooled, is used as fuel. Then, the remaining carbon and steel wires are left. After removing the carbon, the steel wires are cooled and sent to a recycling facility. Additionally, there are other methods to recycle tires. One of them is shredding. Tires are shredded into a powder form, which is then used to make rubber tiles for construction. A few years ago, the Sulaibiya tire graveyard, which looked like this, was completely emptied by 2021, and now looks like this in satellite images. But today, there are still 4 billion tires dumped in various countries around the world. This was about the tire graveyard, but the colorful sight you see in this photo is not a garden of flowers, but rather the world's largest bicycle graveyard in China. A few years ago, there was a huge boom in bike sharing in China. In 2014, proper bike sharing programs were launched where people could rent bikes from one station and park them at automatic docks at another station. Gradually, this service advanced, and with the help of a mobile app, it became very easy to find the location of nearby bikes. People found this service very convenient, but often when bikes were needed, none were available at nearby locations. To meet this market demand, many new cycles were needed. This method was considered the best and cheapest way of travel for the middle class. Eventually, to fill this market gap, several multi-billion-dollar companies emerged. In each city, hundreds of cycle booths were built, housing thousands to millions of cycles. At its peak, around 70 bike-sharing companies operated in China. According to a 2017 survey, China's bike-sharing market was ranked #1 in the world. It was estimated that at one point, there were 16 million cycles on the roads in China. Then, a time came when this business became overly saturated and was no longer profitable. Investors stopped investing in this business model, leading to the decline of bike-sharing in China. The situation reached a point where, although the streets of Beijing could support 12 million cycles, bike-sharing companies had distributed 23 million cycles, double Beijing's capacity. Consequently, the issue of parking these excess cycles became a huge problem. People began parking bikes on the roadsides, and soon, piles of bicycles started accumulating in every street corner. By 2018, more than half of the bike-sharing companies went bankrupt, and their bikes were left abandoned. The government started collecting these bikes to clean up the cities and brought them to dumping yards. Bicycles were gathered from every street and corner and taken to these yards. Today, each of these dumping yards contains about 200,000 cycles, and there are many such large and small dumping yards in China, now known as bicycle graveyards. Even today, bike sharing is very popular in China, but the market is no longer overflowing as it was in 2017.